Joining me now is the former NATO Supreme Commander, retired Admiral James Stavridis. He's currently a partner at the Carlyle Group, a global investment firm, and also advises or serves on the board of a handful of defense-related companies. He has a new book out called The Admiral's Bookshelf. And as you can see from the study behind him, he is an avid reader. Jim, give us a sense first of just what was your first reaction when you heard about this? Is it as stunning as it sounds?
It is stunning, but not definitive. What I mean by that is some observers, Fareed, have kind of compared it to Pearl Harbor, this pivotal moment that changes global geopolitics. It's not a Pearl Harbor. It is a very clever operation. It did three big things. Number one, it's an example of how penetrated Russia is by Ukraine. The trade craft here, you can only compare it to the Israeli Beeper operation of some months ago. Number two, it takes away a fundamental Russian warfighting advantage. Russia always feels our country is so big, the strategic distances cannot be overcome. Think Hitler trying to invade, Napoleon failing. In this case, these targets were struck 3,000 miles from Ukraine, quite remarkable. And number three, it just continues to show to Russia the determination of the Ukrainians alongside this creativity. You know, I'm Greek American. It feels like Trojan horse kind of moment more than anything else.
And yeah, that is true with those canisters popping open and the drones popping open, much like the soldiers jumping out of the Trojan horse. But give us a sense with all that. What does the battlefield look like today? It still seems like we're at a kind of deadlock. I don't know a very bloody deadlock, but a deadlock.
I think we are. And to me, as a military officer, a former Supreme Allied Commander, what's ironic is that on the one hand, you see the most advanced kind of military technologies deployed. Think Starship Troopers, the novel by Robert Heinlein about the future of war. But at the same time, it's World War I. It's the Battle of Verdun. It's artillery, trenches, tanks, bloody hand-to-hand combat. It's the whole spectrum of warfare, and it does feel stalemated to me.
And does that mean, when you look forward, that this is going to just grind along? Is there anything that could change it? I mean, there's been a lot of hope that Donald Trump is finally realizing that the problem is Vladimir Putin. If you were to advise him, what could you do to put pressure on the Russians at this point?
I'd say to President Trump, number one, go to Putin and say, hey, you know that $300 billion in Russian assets in Brussels? Let's get to a negotiating table, or we're going to use that to reconstruct Ukraine. Number two, you could say to Vladimir Putin, hey, I really don't want to do this, but I will give even more advanced long-range missiles, more intelligence. I'll load up the Ukrainians. Vladimir, we don't want to get in that position. Let's get to a negotiating table. And number three, if I were advising President Trump, I'd say, you know, Vladimir, there's a bill in the Senate right now. I think about 80 senators support it. It would put secondary sanctions on any nation that does business with you, to include China and India. That would crack the Russian economy. I think if President Putin were to hear that from his, quote, friend, unquote, Donald Trump, it might encourage him to get to the negotiating table. Let's hope so.
And you think that when you look at Russia's position strategically, I mean, it is 10 times bigger economically than Ukraine. It's 4 times bigger in population. But it's under a lot of stress, right? Indeed
it is. And let's put it this way. Putin's hand of cards is actually not that great. He's playing it fairly well at this point, but he's lost 1 million young Russian men killed or wounded. Probably another 600 to 800,000 have left the country. Huge brain drain. They did it to avoid the draft. His economy is teetering. He's having to pump everything into this war. He's mortgaging the future of Russia for his ego-driven project to try and recreate the Soviet Union. I don't think it's going to work. And I would not want his hand of cards at this moment, particularly if the U.S. continues to stand behind Ukraine.
Christopher Kirchhoff is a leading military strategist who has helped launch the Pentagon's Silicon Valley office, formed to connect California's tech innovation with America's defense machine. He writes about it in his new book, Unit X, How the Pentagon and Silicon Valley Are Transforming the Future of War. Chris, huge pleasure to have you on. You predict exactly what happened in your book. You talk about how these airplanes are going to sit on, in bases, and you're going to have drones that can come in and destroy them. Give us a sense of the asymmetry of cost. Like, what do these planes cost, and what does the drone cost that destroys them?
Oh, it's astonishing. I mean, the drones that come in, the FPV drones, are literally a few $100s a piece, and they are blowing up, hundreds of millions of dollars of aircraft airframes. So the cost calculus is unbelievable.
Is this the future of air war?
It's not the future, it's the present, in the sense that we are now undeniably in an era of attritable precision mass. So if you think back to the first Gulf War, I mean, what an astonishing display of U.S. technology that was, where we all watched on CNN as bombs were dropped down chimneys in buildings. But that precision strike complex, we're talking about, bombs that cost millions of dollars a piece, dropped by fighter aircraft. These drones change everything.
And they are cheap. They use GPS. And it's not just drones. The tanks we gave the Ukrainians were all destroyed by cheap Russian drones, right?
Ukraine is such a tragic war, but there is a silver lining, and that is it has woken up everybody to the reality that war is now drone on drone. And just to drive this home, the U.S. M1A1 Abrams tank is the most advanced battle tank in the world, about $10 million a piece. We provided early in the war the Ukrainians with 31 of them. Almost all of them have now been destroyed by Russian kamikaze drones. And that tells me that the era of mechanized warfare, man-mechanized warfare, which began in the First World War, is coming to an end.
And you can't really update these old legacy systems, right? Like, what is the technology in something like the F-35 fighter jet?
So it turns out in the United States of America, there are two completely different supply chains for technology. There's one for military hardware, and then there's one for everything else. And the military supply chain runs by a different set of rules on a much slower clock because it's dated from the Cold War. It's designed to build aircraft carriers that might be with us for 80 years. It's not designed to, say, build an iPhone and come out with a new version every year. So these two systems are mismatched. I mean, the F-35, it took 16 years for that aircraft to be operational. So it flew in 2016 for the first time with a computer processor, essentially a Pentium 4 from 2000. That same year, the iPhone 7 came out with a processor 100 times faster.
Do you think the Chinese are ahead of us in this sense that they understand that they can't match America symmetrically? I notice, they're not trying to match us in aircraft carriers and things like that. Are they relying entirely on or largely on asymmetrical and high-tech warfare?
So the Chinese have a number of very significant advantages. The first is that they are a country of electronics manufacturing. They produce more drones than the US and Europe combined, probably by a factor of 100. So they are a massive factory. They are also a country that's developing ever more advanced AI, as DeepSeek has shown. Their models are just almost as compelling as our latest models. So when you put that together, they are going to end up being a very formidable adversary on the battlefield.
So how do we get ahead? Because the danger is, we're spending now over $1 trillion on defense. But I look at it, it looks like all these old legacy systems that are going to be destroyed by cheap asymmetrical warfare weapons of the future. What do we do?
So we have to stop buying the old and start buying the new. And we're beginning to do that slowly. So, Defense Innovation Unit led the highest profile initiative of the Pentagon in the last few years called Replicator, which is a program to develop autonomous weapon platforms in all domains, on land, in the air, undersea, on the sea surface. The problem is that it wasn't started for more than a year and a half after Ukraine kicked off. And though directionally correct, the Replicator program was only $1 billion. And if you think about $1 billion in the context of how much money the department spends buying new technology each year, it's 0.7% of that expenditure.
How do you stop buying the old stuff? Because it seems to me this is still all, under 5%, 2% of the Pentagon's budget. If you were to add all this innovation up, the problem is it's pocket change, right?
Well, the new team in the Pentagon that's come in with the Trump administration, many of whom hail from Silicon Valley, are very much signaling they are going to take a break glass approach and that they are looking to swing significant parts of the Pentagon's budget to this new defense sector.